he'll look at it like, you know, he's a huge favorite, but hard not to a little bit. And I'll tell you, if he takes Frazier for granted at all, he broke the balls very solid, came with the long pots very well, moved the cue ball pretty easily, played the safeties in a simple manner. So he's got to be careful. Maybe that 9-0 score will kind of grab Fortunski's attention a little bit.
Yeah, because as we were saying, for anyone who wasn't watching the match, it wasn't by any means the first time Bingham had entered one of these tournaments. He actually had 4 matches at the European Open in Germany last summer and had a couple of wins along the way, including one against Loho Sum, who's beaten some top players himself in recent years and been to a major final. And that will also be interesting to see. Will Bingham go to the practice table, work on a few things, and maybe emerge with a better performance on the loser's side? So they're having the last few balls off the practice racks now, and then we'll be getting underway between Carlo Biado and Stephen Capaldi, British player. Jeremy, do you know much about him?
No, not at all. I was watching him practice, very unique, and I don't know if this is going to sustain, but when he was practicing, he changed the shaft on his cue stick to break the balls, and then after the break was over, he changed the shaft back to a playing shaft. So using the same butt end to break and play, different shafts in between. And talked about it before, and just the way the tables are playing and looking at Stewart's match in the last. If you give away a couple games, you know, on certain equipment, you feel like, all right, let me just earn a shot. I can get out. But that's not the case on this equipment. I mean, it's very demanding every shot. So you give away a couple games, a lot of pressure to get a rack back on your side and get things going.
Yeah, it's such a big test for Stephen Capaldi. He's not used to playing in front of cameras and not really that accustomed to playing against someone of Carlo Biado's standing. We see players often in these open events being a bit overwhelmed by it all, and they just struggle to perform at all. But it's not always the case, so we'll find out how Capaldi fares. Field of 256, although slightly less than that. A number of the top players were given byes through the first round, and they're all playing down between now and tomorrow night to the 64-player single elimination stage. 32 players will come straight through. 32 others will come through on the loser's side, and then one from each of those brackets will be drawn against each other, and after that the draw is locked in, and it's single elimination all the way from the last 64 through to the final on Sunday evening. Carlo Biado would not surprise anyone if he was to win this UK Open. He's won some of the biggest titles in the game in the past, and this is the start of his campaign here in Telford.
A little thin on the one there, but did get balls down. And wasn't long ago, Mike Pinoza put out an article, of course, for Beggars Digest, and rang me up and asking my opinion on where Carlo Biado really ranks all time in the Filipino contingent. And I'll tell you, it's hard not to put him up there really at a very small handful of the top when it comes to tournament play especially. I mean, he's got a US Open title, he's got a World 9-Ball Championship, along with many other titles. And of course, Efren Reyes, the most decorated, maybe the greatest of all time. But when it comes to the Filipinos, I mean, you got to consider, look at that, what a shot there to start. Wow. Shot of the match, first shot.
Absolutely.
And but what I was getting at, I mean, you got Efren Reyes, of course. I think he's maybe more decorated with big titles than Bustamante. Bustamante never winning the World 9-Ball or the US Open. That's how difficult it is to win. Jose Perico, of course, the leader of that invasion. But you got to put this guy up there, a top 4 or 5 ever tournament play from the Republic of the Philippines, which is pretty darn impressive.
Well, that shot we were purring about a couple of moments ago, that really reinforces to Capaldi just what he's up against here.
Well, like all the greats that you just sometimes don't realize is they're so good with the cue ball, but when they need to come with a tough one, they certainly can more often than not. And this guy seems to be that upper echelon. Trying to come 4 rails, probably runs into the green 6 if he's successful. Yeah, like this, looking for a little kiss.
Capaldi hasn't played a shot yet in the match, and he's already looking uncomfortable in his chair there.
Well, just looking at the shots that Carlos played in this opening rack.
That's it. That's what's making him feel uncomfortable. Guess you're hoping to play your best. That's what you're prioritizing. But in a situation like this, you'll be thinking, well, he could help me a bit by maybe not playing his best. Early indications are Biado is very quickly into his stride here.
A little unique with the cueing, kind of cues on the left side of the ball every shot. And takes the cue back and reroutes the cue stick, you might say, to where he wants to address the tip. A little like Bustamante.
So 2 balls down off the break, and some lovely shots after that. Carlo Biado very swiftly finds his way through the opening rack. So it sounds as though, Jeremy, you're making a strong case there that in terms of the question that Mike Penoso put to you about ranking Biado all time among Philippines players, it's a strong case there that maybe he's second only to Reyes.
Well, you know, Alex Pagulayan, of course, who represents Canada but is Filipino. He's won that World 9-ball. He's won that U.S. Open. You know, when it comes to rotation events and an occasional 8-ball event, does he have more titles than Carlo? I don't think so, but it's got to be close between, I would think, Pagulayan and Carlo Biado.
And the other thing as well, Biado's at a stage in his career where you feel there could be a lot more to come from him because he's still doing so well regularly in these tournaments. He won the first world ranking event that was held in 2024. The Chinese Taipei Open, beat Bernie Regalario, young Philippines player, in the final of that. So he's currently 23 in the world, an improvement of 7 places from the start of the year. But over the last few years, he's far from a scenario where he's been playing in everything, so I think that ranking is a little misleading. Of course, you can only base the rankings on the tournaments the guys play in, but there's nobody who would suggest that Biado is only the 23rd best player in the world by any means. 1-0 up here.
Yeah, and one of those special ones that once he nears that final, it very rarely eludes him, the trophy. Better break off here, a little better hit on the 1. It's going to get a great result, a little easier shot to start in a very doable rack. Could spread the cue ball here, could come twice across, just above the 8-9, back out to the center of the table.
Just another winner to tell you about from the matches we've been keeping an eye on this morning. Bizar Spahiu of Albania comfortably through a 9-2 winner against Guillermo Miguel Anglada of Argentina.
Yeah, here you can see him cueing the left, but he'll come across and hit right English. And that could be from a man we talked about, Bustamante, Francisco Bustamante, very similar. Something that maybe Carlo took from him as a young man. I think Carlo approaching 40 years old, I believe.
He's gone past 40 years
okay.
old, yeah, but not long ago. He reached that landmark last October.
That's right. And I was thinking about Bustamante. Bustamante now 60 years old, so definitely a player that Carlo would have looked up to and watched quite a bit in his younger days. Looks like going to draw the cue ball back out for the green 6 in the same pocket.
World champion in 2017, beat Roland Garcia. The only time, in fact, that the final has been contested between 2 Philippines players.
Yeah, Roland here as well, another player that does very well on the tighter pockets, and a player, if he gets comfortable, can be very dangerous, and I think a guy that could win this event. You talked about players around the rankings and spoke with Sam Henderson's father here just on the break a few minutes ago, and he's a little outside that top 100 also. Did win his first 2 matches here yesterday, so trying to make some noise, bouncing into that top 100, getting into the World 9-Ball Championships.
Yeah, it's basically the top 100 players who have signed up as WNT professionals in the rankings at the end of this event will automatically go to the World Championship. So you have to think there might be 2 or 3 players among the top 100 who don't go, so it'll probably stretch slightly below 100th in those ranking positions. And just as it looked like Carlo Biado might make it back-to-back breaking runs to start the match, he's offered just a glimmer of hope here for Capaldi. He could draw level.
Yeah, one of the more simple shots he's had in these first two frames, and we'll see his opponent, Stephen Capaldi, and he's going to go to the air here to start.
You get the sense he's not going to get many opportunities, so really can't afford to let this one pass him by, and that's pretty good. But just a little test of nerve here. We've talked about the circumstances he's in, not used to being in this kind of setting against a player like Biado, so this is just a little psychological test. Oh, but he did that very, very calmly. So Stephen Capaldi, against all expectations of only a few moments ago, is level with Carlo Biado at 1-1.
As you can see there, and the camera going right to change shafts to break with, so has one butt end of the cue stick he likes.
Gary Wilson has been struggling throughout to shake off Mubarak Al-Wahaibi of Oman, but he's on the hill now, Wilson, at 8-6, and another British player on the brink of victory is Benji Buckley, who leads Sweden's Erik Gardeloff by 8 racks to 3. Darren Appleton, very experienced and successful British player, has lost the first 2 racks to Nicholas Dorr. Jan Uski, who you played last week, Jeremy, in the Scottish Open, has won the first rack against Chen Wei Chen. Emil Andre Gangflo just a couple of away from victory now, 7-3. The young Norwegian leads Damien Massey. Piers Labuta 6-2 up on Gareth Esprit, and Paul Corrigan has a 6-2 lead over Tolian Han of Singapore.
Wow, that's surprising, and not saying anything about Paul, but how steady Han is of Singapore, and of course a guy right on that number you were talking about, trying to get into World Championships. Pretty nice break off here. Got one down, has a nice shot at the 1-ball.
Yeah, just one more winner to tell you about. Chang Yu Long, 9-1 against Manuel Montejo of Spain. Back to this one.
Tell you what, you got to like what you've seen. A nice jump shot on the 8, a nice aggressive stroke on the 9, and another one there on the 1-ball from some distance. So these shots right here will definitely grab Carlo's attention. Carlo's a player that really doesn't, vary too far from what he's trying to do, match in, match out. And, trying to, he understands he's a big favorite, but still gear up for more matches coming later in the day. But it is 9-ball pool, Michael, and you cannot discard the unexpected. Looks like he can kind of cannon into the pink here. He's going to keep it simple, maybe trying to play for the bank cross side. Got a little off angle. It's the type of bank I don't think you can cross it over and make it, or kind of stiff it in. And what I mean by that is apply a little speed and try and, not cross the cue ball over. Now looks like a safety maybe behind the 6. Just going to catch a piece of the 6, still kind of carrying the cue ball. Is he looking at the forward to the lower right?
Yeah, seems he was. Now, where's it going to finish?
Yeah, he caught that quite a bit, thick to the pocket, towards the pocket. I think the cue ball would have really ran into the 7 and maybe had some problems. Thought he looked more like the safety there of some sort. As a big big favorite, the one thing you don't want is your opponent to get some balls in early, right? Some shots they maybe shouldn't have gotten, or maybe not so easy.
Well, when Stephen Capaldi was in his chair watching Carlo Biado dominate the early exchanges, I have to say he was looking a bit unsettled by the prospect of what was facing him. Since he's started getting to the table, he's looked very comfortable indeed. And now has a chance to lead one of the best players in the world in the early stages of this match. And this is why, when you have control of a match, you can't let go of it. Biado looked like he was going to go 2-0 up, and if that had happened, he's breaking in the third rack. Always the chance he can just disappear over the hill and effectively freeze Capaldi out of the match. But the unexpected miss on the 8 opened the door a bit. Capaldi now has this 9 ball to take a 2-1 lead. Ooh, but a long way out. And he's not had the luck here. And this is going to hand the initiative straight back to Biado. So we said Capaldi might be limited in terms of the chances he has early on to establish himself in this match. He's passed one up there. And so it's Carlo Biado who instead leads. For the second time in this match, it's 2 racks to 1. Benji Buckley is through. He's beaten Eric Gardeloff of Sweden by 9 racks to 3. And the reward for that is a clash with the man who potted the winning 9 for Europe at the Mosconi Cup in North London just before Christmas, David Al-Kadi. That'll be coming up later today. Gary Wilson still has work to do, though. He's 8-7 in front of Mubarak Al-Wahaibi. If Wilson wins that, he'll have an all-British clash with Elliot Sanderson in the next round. John Mora, useful Canadian player, has won the first against Flavian Glont. Daniel Maciol of Poland has taken the opener against the British player Matthew Hayden. Nicholas Dorr now 3-0 up on Darren Appleton. Oliver Shalnocki continuing to edge towards victory, 7-2 now against Can Salim. And Ralph Souquet leads Holger Veer also by 7 racks to 2. Here it's 2-1 to Biado.
No, not the shot on the blue 2 he got in the first 2 racks, but just gotta like the way he broke the balls there, though. Pretty effortless. Got a nice spread. Blue 2 get kicked right there to hold up over the corner, but looks like he'll kick and try and come across this ball, sending the blue 2 up the right rail a bit as the cue ball just filters over to the left. How was that control? Very good. And that's why, you see a lot of players that get pretty upset over and over and over not getting shots after the break. And sure like those players that just get on with it, understanding they're in control first. They get to make the first move. Looks like he needs to kick maybe across behind the purple some kind of way and back at the blue 2. This is okay as well. May have to go lefty. Pretty nifty. Nice hit. Got the cue ball over the brown 7, so probably a safety here. Could cut this in trying to come across and take the red 3 on from a little distance, but man, got to be a big underdog to make this. I say big underdog, maybe 40%.
Stephen Capaldi did play in the Scottish Open last weekend. Didn't make any progress in it. But nevertheless, just being there and being around all the great players that were in that field and having the experience of that sort of tournament environment will have helped ease him into this UK Open just a little.
Yeah, looking for the 2-rail scape here to come underneath, banging the 2-up table, trying to hold the cue ball here on the bottom. Very doable kick shot.
Using this implement and pool, it's very different to a snooker one, isn't it, where it's just the cross. With this, the moose head, as I call it, you've got all the different settings, so you have a lot of options in where you place it and then where you put the cue on top of it.
Ah, nice shot. Coming in with a lighter speed, going directly into the blue, too. They have moose in Ireland? Guessing not.
You've got me thinking about that now.
Yeah, I've driven around the UK quite a bit, and it's amazing y'all don't have near the wildlife that we have in America. Or I say y'all, you not from the UK, of course, but
Well, right next door.
yeah, close. Probably pretty similar when it comes to the wildlife, I would guess. Oh, looky here. Pays to hit him. This is going to spin over on top of the 3, but he'll take it. Was not trying to make that ball, trying to send it down for a safety, really putting his concentration on the cue ball. 3 did catch the knuckle. Nothing easy, though, here for Steven. on the green 6. Probably goes in with a bit of speed.
So start of the match with a break and run. Looked like he was going to have another one in the next rack, but missed the 8. Now, though, 2 balls away from completing his second break and run in this first round contest.
Yeah, now just looking at the draw and the player list, of course, besides Vietnam last year, I believe it's the biggest group of Filipino players we've had at a World 9-Ball Tour event here this year at the UK.
Carlo Biado at the forefront of that, and looking pretty sharp, you have to say. Now he's leading Stephen Capaldi 4-1. So that was a fairly short rack, so not a great deal has changed in the matches going on since we last updated you. Pius Labutas, though, of Lithuania, has moved to the hill. He was 1 rack away from getting to the final of one of these Matchroom Open events last year in the Spanish Open. 8-3 up against Gareth Esprit. Paul Corrigan still leading 7-4 as he looks to pull off a big upset, really, you would have to say, against Tolian Han, who was a World Cup finalist with Singapore just a couple of years ago. Billy Thorpe, former US Mosconi Cup player, off to a flying start, leading Tim Jonkman of the Netherlands by 3 racks to 0.
Yeah, I think Billy playing his best pool ever. I think day in, day out by a long shot as well.
Did manage to win a ranking title on the World 9-Ball Tour last year, and for a while there was talk of a Mosconi Cup return for him. Didn't quite happen in the end, but he's certainly someone who'll be in the conversation for the American team again this year.
Yeah, and also I think you talking about the Philippines, I think it's maybe most Americans we've seen at the UK Open in now its 3rd year.
Well, they know the opportunities are there, and of course you play in these events, it's a big factor in terms of trying to get into things like the Mosconi Cup and now the Reyes Cup as well for the Asian players. You know that the other players who are trying to make the team are going to come to these events and pick up ranking points, so you've got to be there to compete to do the same. Carlo Biado would be expected to be part of that Asian team. He's got a good lead here, 4-1.
And he's gotten better and better with the break shot. Seems very consistent with the cue ball path. He's got a cross side bank. It's a little off angle, but a hard one to pass up on. The overhead here will show us a little more about that bank shot. And, you know, Michael, all these players, you know, of course, the Mosconi is a big motivator, but if you're talking about, you know, I think it was yesterday you brought up about Sam Henderson being out here with the best players. And, of course, he's a youngster trying to get experience, but there's a lot of somewhat veterans trying to do the same thing, recognizing this is where it's at, this is where you got to be, and if you have the chance to do so, I think it's a no-brainer. Decide to play behind the 6, so taking no shots off. Carlo Biado.
Just to set your mind at rest, I've just texted home and it has been emphatically confirmed we do not have mooses in Ireland.
Well, I don't think we had to make that text message, but thanks for the confirmation.
I was pretty sure, but sometimes things surprise you that are going on you didn't realize about. Anyone who wasn't listening 5 minutes ago will wonder why on earth we're talking about that. Anyway, back to this.
Oh, wow, what a hit here with the jump cue. Great shot. And really just with the opportunity given, he's done really well. One mistake to take a 2-1 lead there in game 3, but overall, and that's why you saw the safety maybe from Steven, that Carlos recognized this man can play. This is going to catch the 7, but it's going to be okay. Very tidy cue ball. Yeah, I guess it'd be like squirrels and foxes, maybe. I'm not sure what else really. UK and Ireland.
Well, we've definitely got plenty of those anyway.
That's a start. All right, I don't think he'll kick with a lot of speed here. He wants to keep some control on the hit, and plus a lot of traffic down here to maybe get fortunate. Okay, this kick as well, not too much speed. Yeah, lots of good things can happen. He recognizes things pretty well, so whether it be a former snooker player, maybe English 8-ball, definitely has spent some time cueing the ball competitively, and pretty solid so far, even though trailing 4-1.
Yeah, he seemed to be thrown briefly around the time he missed that 9, but like I say, it was only briefly. He's looking quite composed again now.
Yeah, Carlo's not going to be happy there. That ball played pretty natural to bank the 3 away and come 2 cushions on the back side of the black 8. Looks like is BJ Usry in action now, I believe. Another fine player from the U.S.
Yeah, 3-1 lead over Ioannis Charlaftis of Greece.
I think that BJ got comfortable here. I think the table set up nice for him. He's a real bulldog. Doesn't want to give away any shots and doesn't mind grinding if the racks aren't necessarily runnable, which is going to be the case some here. Now another bank. Does he take it on? And I think, you know, the tighter tables really opens up for different types of play. Now, it's not going to vary a whole lot. The run out's still going to be the one that wins the matches. But you think about a player like David Alcady, right? Where you think the tight pockets may occasionally cost him a miss because, you know, long ball, I think he would admit that he's not as good as some of the top guys. But then on the other side of things, you know, he's one of the best tactically. So when you get on the tight table, a lot of that comes into play as well. So a couple ways to look at it. Big draw stroke between the 8-9 off 1 cushion. This is going to fall pretty straight near the cushion, so this is going to be a little bit of a problem getting to the 6. May be able to go forward and bump the 6. I don't know if he wants to elevate, take really a chance at missing this ball.
Reached the last 32 of this UK Open last year, and then came up against the defending champion and indeed eventual runner-up that week, Joshua Filler, who beaten by 10 racks to 1.
Really showed us a lot here in the first, what will be 6 games after these are cleared. All kinds of shots here from Carlo. It's kind of the difference in the upper echelon, really. The tight table, of course, will cause a few extra misses, but it doesn't slow down their aggression. And of course, knowing you can do it, that's half the battle.
He's looking pretty strong, isn't he? Very efficient so far in the match. It's another good rack for Carlo Biado. And it's another one that he's won. 4 in a row now. Carlo Biado leads Stephen Capaldi by 5 racks to 1. And we've already seen one British player whitewashed on the main table today. Stuart Bingham earlier today. Well, over on table 2, Darren Appleton, much more associated with this particular cue sport. is in danger of the same fate because he's 6-0 down now against Germany's Nicholas Dorr. Oliver Szolnocki has a 7-4 lead over Can Salim of Germany. Jamie Mocock, British player, up against the experienced Italian Daniel Corrieri. That's Corrieri leading 3-2 there at the moment. And a couple of players on the hill. Georgi Georgiev of Bulgaria at 8-5 against Ramesh Gokul. And Norway's Emil-Andre Gangflo against Damien Massey. Gangflo leading 8-4. Tolian Han has got one back. He trails Paul Corrigan 7-5 now. Lu Hee Chan has just finished it off at 9-6 against Nikos Economopoulos. Tyler Stars won the first against Jaspal Bamotra. And Pius Labutus has got the job done, 9-3 over Gareth Esprit. Back to this one.
You said a lot of fine names there that I think are going to need to have some eyes on them throughout 2024. I think Pius Labutus, of course, already making some noise in that final at the Derby City Classic. And a great final in the wee hours there against Joshua Filler. And I think Gangflo as well as a player I picked to maybe, you know, not win one of these events necessarily, but make a deeper run than expected. Really like the kid's game, and I think he shows a lot of heart as well.
Yeah, Labutus has been in another ranking final in the US since then, and of course he had that great run at the Spanish Open last year. So we see a lot of players who come through and have one good tournament, and then the difficulty is building on it. But he's had a number of good tournaments now over the last year or so.
Yeah, falling a little straight here on the pink. He's going to have to work the cue ball with some speed here to get back for the purple. But I kind of felt like, of course, you can't take anything away from Dang and Bijsterbosch, and of course I think it was Skylar Woodward in that other semifinal. But I really thought Pius throughout the event was kind of the class of that Spanish Open, and it was an incredible match getting beat hill there by Bijsterbosch in the semis.
Yeah, you think he only lost that by one rack to the guy who in turn was one rack away from winning the tournament. So although it might seem like a bit of a leap to say Labutus could win one of these events, I don't think it is. If he can find that form again, and as I say, there have been indications since then that it wasn't just a one-off, so certainly one of the names to keep an eye on throughout 2024.
Yeah, I mean, the Derby City Classic, you know, it has somewhat close to 500 players, which is pretty incredible, but not quite the total class field. But you still have to beat those guys to make deep runs. And of course, the same thing in that last ranking event where he finished runner-up as well. I believe it was the Super Billiard Expo.
Yeah, Jason Shaw is the winner there. And you talk about Derby City Classic, JJ, if you look down the roll of honor, the list of winners and runners-up, you don't see many small-time names there. It's all big names in the sport. Carlo Biado is certainly one of those, and he has ripped through that 7th rack. He's now just 3 away from victory and playing well here. He leads Stephen Capaldi 6-1.
Yeah, Capaldi with a little smile, maybe a talk with one of his fans, it looks like, and really got to hang your head pretty high if you're him. Hasn't done a whole lot wrong to be down 6-1. That's how good it's been from Carlo.
Dutchman Tim Jonkman has opened his account. He now trails American Billy Thorpe 3-1. Masato Yoshioka, a player just outside that top 100 we've been talking about in terms of qualifying for the World Championship, which will be decided at the end of this tournament. Just starting out against British player James Lee. So that's one for us to just keep an eye on. Jaspal Bamotra of India has levelled at 1-1 early stages against US Mosconi player Tyler Steyer. And Ralph Souquet has won. He's beaten Holger Veer 9-2.
I'll tell you, Carlo, you may be saying to the pool gods, let me save a few of these shots after the break for a few later rounds. He's breaking the balls great, but really getting a good look quite often. This one, the easiest of them all. At least the starter, he's got to manufacture the cue ball with some traffic.
Well, the way he's been playing, you have to say, that wasn't expected.
No, difficult shot, though, trying to hold the cue ball. If he just could put more speed on it, it becomes pretty comfortable, that shot, but a little delicate with the light draw stroke. Oh, he's overcut this. Is it going to hang?
Well, if you're going to have any chance of even being competitive against these top players, you've got to punish them for their misses, and Capaldi certainly didn't there. And Biado is straight back to the table.
Yeah, he's falling perfect on the pink to come across to get the natural angle from left of the purple 5. That way he can come up the clear side of the table for the 6.
As we said earlier, he has won the World Championship in the past. Now, in most sports where there is a World Championship, that's the absolute undisputed peak of the sport. Not so in this, because a lot of people would maintain the US Open, with its longer history and all its prestige, is bigger. So I guess the ideal thing is to win them both, and he did that in 2021. So many close matches along the way to the final, where he then beat Aloysius Yap, making him only the 10th player to have won both the World Championship and the US Open. Been a couple more since then. But while I was talking about all that, he has run wildly out of position on the 8.
Yeah, and that's to stay clear of the 9. Just got a little extra into it now. Gonna have to play some thin one off the 8. Really unnecessary to get the cue ball on the rail. That's the big part of this shot. Should just edge it. Yeah, I think the U.S. Open, it's hard. It's a hard argument. Of course, if someone thinks the world's is bigger, it's hard to say they're wrong. But I think the U.S. Open is somewhat like the British Open in golf, where it's the home of the sport. And of course, some claim it bigger than, or the biggest major in the golfing world because of that.
Well, it is the home of the sport, JJ, and that's why it's called the Open Championship.
Right. But I'm saying, like, you know, U.S. Open with American pocket billiards, right?
Yeah,
so.
yeah. No, just having a bit of fun with you on that, because I know it's always the debate. Americans love calling it the British Open, and then the British like to give it the extra prestige.
That's right. Oh, swinging at them both. Why not? It was there. It's going to leave a difficult one anytime you're near the rail, even though facing that 8 up in the upper left. Now, the key to this shot is don't try to baby it too much to hold for the 9. You can go all the way up near the side pocket, still have a reasonable cut, and make yourself a little more accurate. Oh, he's jacking up. That's surprising. That's another thing that the top players, the pocket size, you know, they'll play an occasional shot different, understanding percentages, but when it comes to really the mentality, they still stay so aggressive, so impressive to watch.
And that's half a dozen racks in a row now for Carlo Biado. He leads Stephen Capaldi 7-1 and just needs a couple more to go through. News of a couple of other players who have gone through. Georgi Georgiev of Bulgaria has got the job done 9-5 against Ramesh Gokul, and Georgiev will now play Emil-Andre Gangflo, who's also won in the last few minutes by 9 racks to 4 against Damien Massey. Tolian Han is continuing to battle back against Paul Corrigan, looking to avert a bit of a surprise there. Corrigan still leads, but now by just 1 at 7-6. Billy Thorpe 4-1 up on Tim Yonkman. All those matches in the first round. You've got to win 3 to get through on the winner's side to single elimination.
What you got to like from what you see with Carlo, of course, very consistent with the one in the side, cue ball tracking back and forth, but not having to really unload to get nice spreads. So, you know, there's going to be, of course, some safety battles in this tournament, but I think players that can separate themselves with a few break and runs during a match is going to be huge, especially on the tough equipment. Edge this and go by. He's playing English, it looks like. Oh, great control there. Really good.
Just at that stage where he's in total control and just wants to see it out now. And it hasn't been, Jeremy, as if Capaldi's had a load of chances here and just not been able to take them. Yes, he's made a few mistakes, but I don't think he's disgraced himself by any means with this one. Biado has overall played very well. Just one or two moments, you think of that 9 that Capaldi missed earlier on that may have made a difference.
Well, I think he's played super solid for the limited time he's had at the table, especially, you know, against a player that's putting so much heat on you. Carlo not taking anything for granted, really, in his, you know, kind of tournament form. It's amazing what he doesn't mind doing at the table, though. Right here, jacking up to avoid the 9, maybe, as he comes down with the cue ball. Nothing to it.
I think Biado will certainly be targeting a better year in these big field matchroom events than he had in 2023. You look at his record in the Open tournaments last year. As I said, he went out in the last 32 of this event. Had to go through the loser's side to make single elimination at the Hanoi Open. Got through, but then drew Francisco Sanchez Ruiz and was beaten by him. So his best run last year in one of those events was actually at the US Open, where he got to the last 16 and was level at 6-all with Federer Gorst. Gorst then pulled away to win 10-7, went on to reach the final.
Yeah, it feels like an event at least. You know, Carlo, who knows how long he'll play, but stays very healthy and always seems in shape. But the US Open seems like an event he'll be in the mix no matter what. Just one of those settings he likes, and could have had a couple of them already, really.
Yeah, well, the year before he did very well in defense of the title and was one rack away from getting to the final again. And he's one rack away from winning here and getting through to the next round, because he now leads Stephen Capaldi 8-1. Winner of this will play either Daniel Corriere, a World Cup regular for Italy, or Britain's Jamie Mocock, and that one could still go either way because it's 4-all at the moment. Finland's Jani Uski in control early on against Chen Wei Chen. Uski leading 4-1 there. Oliver Szolnoki has been working away for well over 2 hours now, but he's finally made it to the hill at 8-4 against Khan Salim. Darren Appleton took a while to get his first rack on the board. Now that he has, he's got another one. Appleton 6-2 down, though, to Nicholas Dorr. John Mora has turned it around after a difficult start, leads Flavian Glont of Romania 4-3. Poland's Daniel Maciol 6-1 up on Matthew Hayden of Britain. And BJ Ussery, American player you were talking up a little earlier, JJ, leading 5-1 against Jonas Charlaftis. Here, it's 8-1.
Yeah, another good look at the blue, too. I don't think he's missed the one on the side yet. His first break wasn't his best, but that's pretty common with a lot of the players. Get settled in after the first break shot. Real natural here on the 2, just a little high right English maybe to come across. Just got to have a little concern of the purple 5 as he comes across with the cue ball, trying to play the red 3 in the same corner as the blue 2.
Well, that rolls just a little further, and Capaldi is probably starting to gather up his things.
Looks like he's going to take on this cut shot. I'm curious about the cue ball. Is he going to try and run into the purple? Is he going to try and kill the cue ball? A little English, maybe a little low right spin.
As I was saying, if it ran just a little further, it would have been a straightforward pot on the 3, and you would have expected him to see it out from there. As it is, he was left with a more difficult pot, but he's come through it, back in prime position now. Biado will fancy his chances of finishing it out with yet another break and run.
Is this going to be his 4th or 5th, I think?
It's going to take me a moment to count them up. It will be his 4th.
And again, I mean, we've seen some crazy things. The craziest stat I've seen in a while, I think, was the Whirlpool Master Final just a couple weeks ago. 7 breaking runs in that final for Josh Filler. Almost half the racks needed, or over half the racks needed, rather. And still didn't get the W. But here, again, at the UK Open, if you run 4 racks, you got to believe percentages-wise, you're going to win 75–80% of your matches, at least.
Well, we don't see every match, far from it, but certainly don't think we've seen anyone play better than this over the first couple of days of this UK Open. Stephen Capaldi was in it early on. He had a couple of chances, made a couple of mistakes, but overall, he did okay, I think you'd have to say. Hasn't been given much of an opportunity. A very accomplished display from Carlo Biado, and he is safely through the first hurdle. He defeats Stephen Capaldi by 9 racks to 1. So there's an all-British clash coming up in a moment. It's going to be Gary Wilson against Elliot Sanderson, and there'll be an all-British commentary team for it. Phil Yates and Carl Boys will be along to talk you through that one in just a few minutes' time.